Hello everyone and welcome to my first video in about 4 months, and I would like to apologise for that. I'm pretty sure I did say earlier on, don't expect consistent uploads from me. I'm hoping that now that I've finished university, which is the reason why I've taken so long for this video to come out, I'm hoping that now I've finished university, the uploads will be a bit more consistent. Don't expect videos every week, but hopefully whenever I feel like it, I'll put a video out. But yes, I have just completed university, and it's been a very, very tough 3 years. It's been a long old slog, but we finally made it. We finished it, and now I can move on and, I guess, look for new adventures in life. But anyways, enough of my life story. Just an update on why I've taken so long. So, we are almost at the end of the summer break, and many F1 YouTubers out there have already released their mid-season reviews. You know, what they think of each driver's performance so far this season, what they think of every team, best race, worst race, etc. And that's exactly what I'm going to do in this video. So, here are my opinions on the 2021 season so far, and it's been quite an exciting season. It's been the best season since 2018, I'd say, so far, or maybe 2017, I don't know, but this is the first time we've had a championship battle between two drivers and two different teams since 2018. Obviously the 2018 title battle fizzled out because Sebastian Vettel made several mistakes in the second half of the season and Hamilton ran away with it, but I don't expect the same thing this year. I hope we don't get the same thing this year. But anyways, here are my thoughts on 2021 so far. And we're going to start with liveries. Because yes, I wanted to do a livery ranking before the start of the season. But as I said, university, man, I didn't have much time. So we're going to do it now. And I think now is a better time to do it rather than the beginning of the season. Because McLaren have had a one-off livery since the beginning of the season. And I've seen what the cars kind of look like on track for a while. So my opinions have shifted since the beginning of the season. So let's just dive straight into the livery rankings. So, at number 10, we have McLaren. Now, McLaren is my favourite team, so it very much pays me to put McLaren last on this list. But unfortunately, the livery that they've had since 2020 really is not to my liking at all. I'm generally not a fan of this papaya era McLaren have had since kind of 2017-18, around there. Yes, I know papaya is one of McLaren's original colours that they've used from the late 60s. It was the first time they used it in 1968, I believe. But honestly, it really isn't to my liking. And especially paired with blue, papaya and blue, I don't know. I've said this before, it just looks like a backmarker livery to me, and it doesn't look like a livery from a top team, which is essentially McLaren is borderline top team now. They're joint third in the standings. But my livery rankings, it's a 2 out of 10. I'm giving McLaren a 2 out of 10. The papaya is not my thing, and generally just the way the livery has been designed, I really don't like how the livery is designed with... Yes, there's too many sponsors on the car, first of all, which kind of clutters the livery. Which I guess isn't McLaren's fault, they need money, but I don't think it looks great. And just how the livery's been designed, how it's laid out with the blue patch on the side, with the kind of rainbow effect on the end of it, and the orange kind of bit in the middle, and then the blue line on top. It just looks a bit weird. I don't know. It just looks a bit backmarkerish to me. I'm sorry. It's a 2 out of 10, I'm afraid. In number 9, Ferrari. Now, the first 5 or 6 races of the season, I may have put this behind the McLaren because of the totally not Marlboro logo, which I didn't really have a problem with. But when the Michelin logo was white and black, I was fine with it. But they changed to green this year, and I was thinking, God, that's absolutely disgusting. A green logo on a red car. it doesn't look great. So I was considering putting this last, but they've banned it now, thank goodness. Michelin has banned. So I think it's better than the McLaren purely because I think it's a cleaner looking livery. It's quite a simple livery, does the job. I mean, it's Ferrari. Obviously, it's just going to be plain red mostly. But the reason why it's 9th, even without the Michelin logo, I just think it's really boring. It's just a plain red car. I don't like the whole matte finish Ferrari has gone for since 2019. I think it makes it look even more boring and dull. I much prefer the glossy, shiny Ferraris because at least they looked a bit more expensive and lavish and flamboyant, which flamboyance is one of the words that comes to mind when you think Ferrari is a brand. So for me, this matte livery really doesn't represent them that well, and I don't like how it looks like it's taken a P at the back of it with that kind of gradient, which isn't really a gradient because it's very sudden. I don't like that either, so I'm sorry, but the Ferrari is the number 9 on the list, and it's a 3 out of 10. Now number 8, and for me the biggest disappointment, livery rise compared to last year out of all the teams, Mercedes. Now, I loved Mercedes' 2020 livery. I thought it was absolutely stunning with the black, the black background with the Petronas swoosh on the side. I didn't really like the Ineos red edition, but I didn't mind it with the black. I think it worked alright with the black, and I liked all the stars towards the back of the car, and obviously the 1 star for Niki Lauda. Which was a nice touch. I thought it made the car look really intimidating, really mean, really evil. It looked like it meant business. Now this year's livery is similar to last year's livery, but they've made a few changes to it, and I think even with those few changes, it's made the livery a whole lot worse. Last year's Mercedes livery, I might have given an 8 or an 8.5 out of 10, something like that. But this year's Mercedes livery to me is a 3.5 out of 10. I really don't like it at all. I think the AMG spam on the engine cover looks ridiculous. I get they're trying to promote the AMG brand more. Fair enough, but I think that was a bad way of doing it. Maybe if you had just written one big AMG logo on the side or something, or one big AMG logo on the engine cover instead of a AMG spam. I think it looks ridiculous. And I don't like how it fades from black to silver. I think they should have kept that black. Mercedes, honestly, generally just a mess. And I think the Ineos logos look even worse this year than last year as well, because it's more of a tomato shade of red this year, whereas last year's was a bit more of a burgundy. I really don't like it. It's a mess. So for me, Mercedes, 3.5 out of 10, number 8 on this list. Now number 7, and it's Red Bull, and I'm giving them 4 out of 10. It's not a bad livery. It's fairly clean. It looks professional. I guess it looks smart, and it's very recognizable and it's iconic. But honestly, again, like the matte trend that we've had for the past few years, I really cannot get behind. I just think the Red Bull's livery is very boring, very dull, not particularly exciting. And they've had this matte design since 2016, and every single year I've been thinking, I'm a bit bored of this now. Can you change it, please? It's got the Bull logo on the engine cover, as you would expect, as they've had since 05, even before that in the Sauber days. The Red Bull logo on the nose. To be fair, I prefer this livery to the one they had in the Infinity era from 2013 to 15, which I thought was a mess. I like the purple, but I didn't like the Infinity logo on the side, and generally the 2015 livery was absolutely abysmal. So currently Red Bull livery is an improvement on that, but I just want them to do something different. I'm just getting really bored of it. So yeah, number 7 on my list is Red Bull, 4 out of 10. Now number 6, and when this livery was first launched, the Aston Martin, I loved it. I put it second on my rankings I did in March, which I didn't publish for a video, but I wrote in a comment, I love this Aston livery. This is an 8 out of 10 livery. I'm going to put it second on my list. But now, when I saw it on track every single race, I've liked it less and less, because the shade of green they've used, it needs certain types of lighting to look good. Like in like bright lighting where the car is the livery, the green really stands out. I think it looks great there. But then when it's darker, like in darker lighting, it just looks like another Mercedes. You can hardly tell it's green at all. It almost looks black. And I just think that the green they've gone with is really disappointing. If they've gone for something like a Caterham 2013 green, and I think that green in that 2013 Caterham was gorgeous. If Aston Martin had used that, I think that would have looked a lot nicer and probably would have been much higher up the rankings. And again, I know the BWT pink stripe. I know that's, for sponsorship reasons, Aston Martin need the money, but if I'm judging this purely livery-wise, I really don't like it. It just looks like I don't know. I don't like it. I think it looks bad. So for me, the Aston Martin is a 6.5 out of 10, and it's my number 6 on my rankings list. Now, number 5, Haas. Now, I have never been a fan of Haas liveries in the past. I think the liveries they had from 2016 to 2018 looked really boring and dull and just I don't know. I didn't. It was a mishmash of grey, white, red. I didn't like it. Black. All that kind of stuff. I didn't really like any of Haas's first 3 liveries. All of their variations. They looked. I don't know. I didn't like them at all. So when Haas went for 2019 Rich Energy colours, I thought, okay, this is an improvement. I still don't love it because it needs more gold, but it's an improvement. And then the whole Rich Energy thing, scandal, I guess, if whatever you want to call it, chaos happened. So they went back to their traditional colour last year, which again I thought was a bit boring. It's better than their first 3 liveries because it looked a bit tidier, but still a bit boring. So this year, when Dimitri Mazzipin decided to sponsor the team with his Uralkali brand, I was thinking, a lot of people criticise this livery because Haas is meant to be an American team, and it kind of looks like it's a Russian team because the car is basically white with some Russian patterns on it. And you got a lot of criticism for that. But for me, honestly, I thought the livery wasn't bad. I quite like the livery. I think it's Haas's best livery yet. I think it looks very clean, professional, smart. And even though, it does look Russian, at the end of the day, it is for sponsorship, it is for money reasons, so it is what it is. Honestly, I just think it's a really clean. I love how the Russian patterns are incorporated into this livery, kind of spread out across very nicely. I think it's a good livery. So I'm giving it a 7 out of 10, and it's number 5 on my list. Now, number 4, and another livery that got a lot of criticism when it was first launched, is Williams. Now, I really like this Williams livery. For me, it's Williams' best livery in a very, very long time. Honestly, I prefer this livery to the Rocket liveries they've had, the white and blue livery they had last year, the Rocket livery they had before that, the 2019 livery, which is plain awful. I like it more than the Martini liveries, and I like it more than the blue and white liveries they've had before that. I think this is honestly Williams' best livery since their Rothmans livery, and I'm being serious here because lots of people made fun of this livery at the beginning, saying, "Oh, it looks like an F1 2020 My Team livery. What's all those stupid blue stripes in the middle of the car and then white?" It just looked a bit cartoonish and a bit childish. But I love that. I love how Williams have gone for something different. The blue lines across the middle of the car. I really like. I love how the Williams, the W logo is incorporated, kind of hidden almost in that, and I like the little hints of orange throughout the livery. I think it looks really cool, and it gives me a retro vibe. I really like it. I think it's something different. I think it's something you don't see very often. Most teams offer solid block colours these days, very conventional looking livery. So I love how Williams have gone for a more funky, exotic looking livery. I really like it, and I think it looks even better on track. I think the blue really pops, and I'm giving it a 7.5 out of 10. My only criticism of it really is I feel like they could have done more with the front, because I don't like how the front is just a patch of just plain white. I think they could have done more with the front. I think it has a bit too much black. I think if they reduce the amount of black. But still, I really like this livery. So 7.5 out of me. For me, the Williams is the 4th best livery in my opinion. And now the 3rd best livery, AlphaTauri, 8 out of 10 for me for this one. Now, I was a big fan of the 2017 to 2019 Toro Rosso liveries. So when it was announced that they were going to rebrand themselves as AlphaTauri, and when they launched their 2020 livery last year, I really didn't like it, mainly because I was just sad that that beautiful Toro Rosso 2017, 18, 19 livery was taken away from me. I felt really sad by that because I loved that 17 to 19 Toro Rosso livery, and I still do. It's one of my favourite F1 liveries of all time, in fact, and it will always be, because I think that blue, chrome, red, really lovely. But last year's AlphaTauri livery I did not like because it had too much white on it. It looked a bit plain, not particularly exciting. But this year, I think they've kind of inverted the colours. They've gone for more navy blue and less white. So kind of opposite of last year. And I prefer this year's livery massively. I really like it. I think it looks really, really professional. And AlphaTauri is a fashion brand. I think this livery looks quite fashionable. And I think it looks really, really clean. I'm not usually a fan of matte paint, but I think in this occasion with navy blue, I think the matte actually works. And I really like how the AlphaTauri logo has been incorporated on the side of the car. And I also like the Honda logo as well in red on the side. So I think massive improvement from last year. And it looks really neat, really tidy. So for me, the AlphaTauri is an 8 out of 10, and it's my 3rd favourite livery. Now, on to the top 2. And the runner-up for me is Alfa Romeo. Now, Alfa Romeo's livery has been getting better and better every single year since they launched their kind of sponsorship deal with Sauber in 2018. The 2018 and 2019 liveries I didn't really like because, again, too much white. They looked quite boring. It was literally just a white car with a red patch on the engine cover, and I didn't really like those. But 2020, they decided to go for something a little bit different by adding a bit more red to the car, which I thought improved massively. It was a bit more of a kind of metallic-y, chromy, cherry-looking red, which I loved. And this year, they've taken that to the next level. This year's Alfa Romeo, for me, is a future classic. And I just think, they've kind of almost inverted last year's livery by putting the red lower in the car and the white higher on the car. I love how the Alfa Romeo logo has been incorporated into this livery. It's not obvious in your face. It's kind of subtly put on the livery, almost in a kind of as a pattern in the livery. And I think it looks great. And I love the little clover, how that's been incorporated into the livery as well. And I just think it's a really, really classy, elegant looking livery. And I've said, the Alfa livery can be good, it just needs more red, and they finally started adding more red to the livery, and I think it looks really, really nice. And yeah, without a doubt, my favourite Alfa Romeo livery since they've come back to the sport in 2018, and it's an 8.5 out of 10. I think it's gorgeous. But my favourite regular livery of 2021, I should say, is the Alpine, and I am delighted. I'm absolutely delighted that this livery is a race winner, thanks to Esteban Ocon and Fernando Alonso playing his part too. The Alpine livery for me is a 9 out of 10. I love this blue. That blue is absolutely perfect. I love the satin finish. It's not quite matte. It's a kind of metallic-y, chromy matte, which I really like. I think it's a nice sheen to it. And I like the little red bits in the livery as well. And the only thing which is really stopping me from giving this a 10 is I think it has a bit too much black in it. I think they need to... If they had reduced the amount of black and had a bit more white, I think... Not white, a bit more blue, I think it would look even better. But for what it is, I think it's absolutely gorgeous. And it's a future classic, again, in my opinion. So for me, the Alpine livery is a 9 out of 10, and it's my favourite regular livery of F1 2021. But there's one more livery. There's one more livery And it really, really annoys me that this is not McLaren's regular livery, because in my opinion it's so much better than the absolute trash 2 out of 10 livery that they've been running since last year. And it's of course the Golf one-off livery they use for Monaco, and I just think it's absolutely gorgeous. You know, the iconic Golf colours which a lot of people know and love, that orange and baby blue, I just think it works. I love that streak of orange running through across the nose, that iconic Golf kind of go faster stripe which they have on many of their liveries. I love that. And the baby blue to me, again, really adds to it. And I like how it's just more of a elegant, classy, you know, iconic livery. And I think it was such a shame that this only was for only one race, because I think it looks absolutely fantastic, and I really, really hope McLaren uses this on their 2022 car. You know, because I think their current livery is just really bad, and I just think it will make their 2022 car look bad. I think if they use their Golf livery on the 2022 car, I think it'll look absolutely fantastic. And again, for me, this is as good as the Alpine. I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. Once, you know, my only criticism with the Golf livery is that it has too many logos on it. Again, not their fault. They need money, but yeah, too many logos. But otherwise, I just think it's a great livery. So for me, Golf livery, you've done yourself good there, and I hope to see you again next year. Please, McLaren, I beg you. So that is my 2021 F1 livery rankings. Now let's move on to the next section of this mid-season review. Now it's time for the most exciting part of this video, I suppose, and it's ranking the drivers based on performance from worst to best. And I'm going to give each driver a rating out of 10 as well. Now, some of these were fairly easy to order, and others were much more difficult. So there's a certain mid-pack of drivers from about 7th to 13th that I found very hard to rate, and I was constantly changing my opinion. But this is my rankings of each driver from worst to best with a rating out of 10. So starting with number 20, and I'm giving this driver a 2 out of 10. It is Nikita Mazzipin. Now, obviously, before he even began the season, last year in December, he was involved in a very inappropriate incident, which was really, it was just a really terrible incident, and already he put himself in a bad position of his own doing. He did something stupid, and he paid the price for that, and already he's giving himself a bad name for no reason. It's such a stupid thing, especially to post on Instagram as well. I don't know what he was thinking there, but already doing that, he's already put himself in a bad position, and many people already wanted him out of Formula 1 before the season had even started. And his junior series wasn't particularly great either. Not winning a single title in junior series, and only finishing in the top 3 once or twice. So it was obviously motivated by money, this seat. His father decided to sponsor the team with Uralkali. His company's all over the car, it's all over the team merch. And that's the sole reason why his son Nikita has a seat in Formula 1. And to be fair, I was expecting to give him a 1 out of 10 at this point. And I still maintain he has been the worst driver this season, mainly because he has been well off the pace of his teammate Mick in most of the season, and it hasn't been pretty. I mean, he's not crushed as much as Mick, so that's one thing I guess which you can say he's not done too badly at. I mean, if you look at the race statistics, Mazzipin has only finished in front of his teammate Schumacher twice out of 11 races. So Schumacher's definitely had the measure of Mazzipin throughout the season overall, despite the fact that he has crashed a few more times, but he's generally just been the quicker driver. So if you can't even beat your teammate and you're driving a shitbox Haas, which also has to be taken into consideration, the car he's driving is the worst car on the grid, and he can't do much, but he's losing to his teammate, where else can you put him other than last? So sorry Nikita, but it's a 2 out of 10. And on to number 19, and it's Nicholas Latifi. And you might be surprised that the driver who has outscored his highly rated teammate George Russell is 19th on this list with a 2.5 out of 10 is the rating I will give him. But again, generally, you know, George Russell has been consistently getting into Q2 and at times Q3. So clearly the Williams car, at least in qualifying, has some pace and is definitely not the worst car on the grid in qualifying anyway. But Nicholas Latifi has struggled a bit more to get that car into Q2, and I don't think he's had a Q3 appearance. I might be wrong on that, but yeah, he's generally his quali pace has been far worse than George Russell. I feel like he's been closer to George in the races, but again, like if you look at the race head-to-head, in the overall head-to-head that both drivers have finished, Latifi has only beaten Russell in one race so far this season. And of course, it happens to be the one race where both drivers finally score points for Williams. That's typical George Russell career summary there, isn't it? The one race where he loses to his teammate, and it's a race where they score points. Oh well. But yeah, Latifi, I mean, look, he's kept it clean for the most part. I don't recall him making too many major mistakes. But he's just generally lacked the pace of his teammate. So, unfortunately, I can't really give him much more than 19 position. But, look, I hope he improves in the second half of the season. Because he's a nice guy. But anyways, moving on to number 18. And number 18 is Mick Schumacher with a 3 out of 10. And really, a 3 out of 10 might sound harsh, but what more can I do? I mean, as you know, he's driving a Haas, which is the worst car on the grid, and unfortunately when you're driving an absolute shopping trolley, there isn't much you can do other than beat your teammate, and that's exactly what he's been doing. He's done what he's had to do. He's been beating Mazzipin in the vast majority of the qualies and races so far this season, and that is all he can do. I think my only criticism of him really is the fact he's crashed in FP3 twice this season already, which has meant he's been unable to take part in qualifying, which obviously with a budget cap is going to be quite expensive for the Haas team. So that's something he needs to work on. Obviously he's a rookie, so you can expect him to have those crashes once in a while because he's new to the sport, and he needs to learn. This is a season for learning, so yeah, making mistakes, but if you can focus on reducing the errors, he's doing alright. I mean, his race in Hungary I thought was his best race of the season, and it was the very previous race, so it shows he is improving. And I thought he displayed some very good racecraft fending off faster cars such as Verstappen. To be fair, Verstappen had a massively damaged car, but I still, Mick showed some good racecraft there, so I think definitely he's improving, and I think there is some talent there. So he's the 18th driver on this list, and it's a 3 out of 10. 17th on this list, also with a 3 out of 10, is Antonio Giovinazzi, and yes, it is getting very tight here. Giovinazzi generally, I think, has been faster than Kimi in qualifying for the most part. Generally, Giovinazzi has had the better qualifying record over Kimi this season. He is leading the quali battle by 8-3, which obviously is an overwhelming majority in favour of Giovinazzi. But when you consider that Kimi Raikkonen is 41 years old and is massively past he's about 13 years past his prime, and clearly seems to be only taking part in F1 as a hobby, as he describes it. Giovinazzi really, he should be beating Kimi, shouldn't he? I mean, Kimi's old. I mean, not old, but for an F1 driver, he's not particularly young anymore. And he's had his day. Like, Giovinazzi's 27 or something like that. 28. He's in his late 20s. He's in his prime. He should be out qualifying Kimi. So for me, this is not really a surprise. But what he also should be doing is beating Kimi in the race. This is a senile Kimi who's had quite a few incidents already this year. And yet he finds himself behind in the race comparison. He is 5-6 behind, 5-6 down in the race comparison. And for me, that's just not good enough. You know, yeah, sure, if this was McLaren Kimi, who was absolutely stupendously fast, then sure, no shame in losing to McLaren Kimi. But Alfa Romeo geriatric Kimi, you damn well should be beating him. So, for me, losing the race head-to-head 6-5 is not good enough. So, he needs to step up next season. I can't really give him more than a 3 out of 10. He's had a better season than 3 drivers below him. I mean, he has a better car too. But I'm putting him below Raikkonen because, you know, the race is more important than the qualifying. Doesn't matter how well your qualifying is, if you're losing to someone in the race, you're going to be below him. So, unfortunately, Gio, great hair, but you need to do better. And now, in 16th position, also a 3 out of 10, is Kimi Raikkonen, and this is a guy who's clearly showing his age. Now, I'm not one of those people who says, you need to get rid of this guy because he's old, you need to bring in the young driver because he's young. That's a stupid, a stupid way of looking at things. You shouldn't hire people just because they're young, you should hire people because they're good. Which is why I'm very on board with Fernando's comeback, and I'm glad he's in the sport. But some people don't decline. Fernando Alonso is not one of the drivers who's declined. Kimi Raikkonen, on the other hand, has clearly declined, and it's time for him to go. You know, his quality pace is bad. It's not been great for a while, to be fair, but this season, at least he was out qualifying Giovinazzi a bit in the past. He can't even do that anymore. His race pace isn't bad, though. I mean, he is beating his teammate, which is all he can do in one of the worst cars on the grid. But, you know, he is showing his age. You know, he's had a couple of big mistakes this season. You know, he lost his front wing against Giovinazzi in Austria, I believe. He gave him a puncture or something like that. Or was it Imola? I can't even remember. No, it was Austria. And then he drove into the side of Vettel. Was that Austria as well? I'm getting confused. But, you know, he drove into the side of Vettel in a straight line, which was clearly his fault. And again, it showed, is he starting to lack spatial awareness? Is it time for him to go and get a more hungry, better driver in there? Because Kimi's had his time. And I just think it probably is time for him to move on. So 3 out of 10 for Kimi Raikkonen. Hopefully he has a better second half of the season. I don't expect it, but it would be nice if this is his last season to go out on a high. Anyways, moving on to 15th position, Yuki Tsunoda, 3.5 out of 10. Now, Yuki Tsunoda had a spectacular rookie F2 season, his one and only season, where before the season started he was told by Red Bull management, if you want that AlphaTauri seat in F1, you need to finish in the top 4 in the standings. And he did that pretty comfortably by finishing 3rd, just 1 point behind Callum Ilott in last season's Formula 2 standings. And he clearly showed a very exciting driving style. He was not afraid to go for overtakes, and generally was showing a lot of talent and promise despite only being 19, 20 years old. So coming into this season, you know, he had a lot of praise on him, people calling him the best rookie F1 has had in years. I believe Ross Brawn said something like that. And clearly this was too much pressure for young Yuki, because he had a good start in Bahrain. His qualifying wasn't great, but he made some positions up and managed to score points in his very first race. But since then, he's kind of gone off the boil a bit. He has crashed a hell of a lot of times. And has been out qualified in every single quali session so far by his teammate Pierre Gasly, who is having a hell of a time in that Toro Rosso / AlphaTauri since he was demoted. He has been on fire. So obviously it's going to be a challenge for Yuki. And obviously, as a rookie, you can expect Yuki to make some mistakes, but is it really acceptable in the pinnacle of, well, a very prestigious racing series? I don't like to call it pinnacle of motorsport. For him to be making this many errors, we've been saying he's an amazing young talent, the best rookie of Honest in years, and he's making a lot of mistakes, and he hasn't out-qualified Pierre Gasly yet, And they even moved him to Italy because he, to try and put some discipline in him or something like that. I don't know what it was exactly what they said, because you can hear him on the radio. He's very, very animated in his behaviour. He gets very agitated quite easy, and I think it would be good for him if he could tone that down. Because I like the way Yuki drives. I like his aggressive driving style, and I genuinely want him to do well. But he needs to tone down his aggression. He needs to tone down his attitude. And I think he needs to try and work with his engineers better. And I think there probably is talent there, but he just needs to calm it down a bit. And look, he's done well in the past few races, and he scored points in 4 of the last 6 races, which isn't too bad. So he is improving, but he needs to improve a bit more. And he needs to start beating Pierre, because Pierre, although a great driver, I don't think it's fair to say he's not quite on the elite level. So I think Yuki needs to start thinking, okay, how do I beat Pierre in order to progress? So it's a 3.5 out of 10. And he just needs to work on crashing less and calming it down a bit. Number 14, and definitely the biggest disappointment of the season, is Daniel Ricciardo. And it's a 4 out of 10 for Daniel Ricciardo. He's and I feel like I'm being generous with 4 out of 10 there, because I was thinking of even giving him 3.5 or 3, but 4 because he's not been crash prone. He's just been off the pace. Now, coming into the season, everyone was so excited. Oh, we've got a Lando-Daniel partnership. It's all going to be memes, and it's going to be funny, and it's going to be banter. And I honestly, I never expected that. Because I always thought, Lando is the guy who's clearly, he's the underdog in this. People, like Daniel Ricciardo is a highly rated driver. And people, everyone was expecting Daniel Ricciardo to beat Lando Norris this season. Well, not everyone, but the vast majority of people were saying, oh, Lando is going to be absolutely destroyed by Daniel this year. Daniel Ricciardo is an amazing driver. He's easily a top 5 driver in the grid. He's going to destroy Lando. And I was one of them. So I'm going to eat humble pie here. I said Daniel Ricciardo is going to beat Lando Norris easily. I was wrong, and I'm going to admit I was wrong. It was foolish of me to admit that. Foolish of me to say such a thing, such a massive generalization before the start of the season, that Daniel was going to beat Lando, because clearly Daniel Ricciardo has been struggling in that car the whole season. He had some performance, his race at Spain was good. He beat Lando in Spain. I thought his British Grand Prix was quite good. He stayed quite close to his teammate. But otherwise, other than in Britain and in Spain, he's not really had maybe in France he did alright, but three races out of 11 where I felt his performance was convincingly decent. It's not been pretty, and his teammates had 3 podiums this season, and he's riding a wave. He's having the time of his life at the moment. And then Daniel Ricciardo is struggling. I think it's something to do with the braking. I think he said he's struggling to adapt to the car. And getting lapped at Monaco was really, I think, the worst moment of his season, I would say, because that really, yes, he was held up by slower cars because it is Monaco, it's hard to pass, but that really painted his season very, very clearly. Summed it up really. And he's my favourite driver, Daniel Ricciardo. So it sucks that he's struggling so much, because I do believe he has a lot of talent. I do believe he can unlock some performance, and I really hope he does in the second half of the season. Or maybe he should just write this season off and just think about next year. Maybe he should just think, you know what, this season is a write-off. Let's go in that simulator. Let's work on understanding this 2022 car and looking towards next season, and really, really focus on being Lando, because if he wants to preserve his legacy, I think he needs to beat Lando Norris. because that's what people expect of him. And I think what he's been doing this season is not good enough. Being 63 points behind his teammate, it's not pretty. But anyway, Daniel Ricciardo, number 14 on the list with a 4 out of 10. And now, this next list of drivers, as I said, 13th up to 7th, was very difficult to rate. I felt they were very close to one another. But number 13, and some of you may think this is quite low, Sergio Perez. I've given Sergio Perez a 6 out of 10. Now, Sergio Perez, he said before the start of the season, it's going to take me about 5 or 6 races to get used to the Red Bull. And fair enough, he delivered on his promise, because the first 5 races he didn't get a podium, although he finished in the top 5 4 out of the 5 races, which I guess was a solid enough performance. His first race in Bahrain was, he had an electrical failure before the race even started, which was very unfortunate, and he did well to come back all the way to 5th. So it showed he has the overtaking ability that he showcased very often at Force India / Racing Point. But then his race in Imola, where he spun twice in the soggy wet Imola, that was the first red flag of this season, where I was thinking, okay, I hope he's not going to go down the Alex Albon / Pierre Gasly 2019 route here, because that wouldn't be very good of him. But then again, it might have showed that maybe the Red Bull second seat really is that much of a bitch. But sure enough, in Baku, his 6th race of the season, he finally found some performance, because during the race, okay, Max Verstappen was very unlucky not to win. He had the puncture after leading for almost the whole race in a commanding lead. But Sergio Perez did a great job as a rear gunner by holding Lewis Hamilton up for the vast majority of the race. He was under constant pressure by Lewis Hamilton, but he held his nerve and he stuck it to him. And when Max had the tyre failure, he did what he had to do, be a good rear gunner for Max. When things go wrong, pick up the pieces and win, and that's what he did. And he won despite having a problem with his hydraulics, which is why he parked his car immediately after crossing the line. So that was a great drive, and he followed that up with another podium in France by overtaking Bottas towards the closing stage of the race. Again, did Red Bull finally find the number 2 driver they were looking for since Daniel Ricciardo left the team in 2018? They went through 2 years of having 2 drivers who just did not gel well with that car. Have they finally found a number 2 driver they can rely on? But it started to go wrong since then, because he didn't score a podium in the remaining 4 races up until the summer break. In the Austrian round, he pushed a driver off the track twice and got 2 penalties for it. And you'd think after doing it once he'd have learnt his lesson. But doing it twice, that was just unnecessary loss of points there. And it showed he was just a bit too aggressive there. He should have just given the guy some room, because that's what I really don't like this trend of pushing drivers off the track that I've been seeing more and more recently, and I'm glad it was penalised there, because I really do not like that style of racing. I'd rather leave the car on the outside some room. So I was in favour of that penalty. And then in Silverstone, spinning off in the sprint qualifying, he could have got some good points there, but instead didn't score any. That was another mistake, that he did there, and it just wasn't, costing Red Bull valuable points, because Red Bull had built up a 40-odd point lead before Silverstone, and in the past 2 races they scored like 2 points in total, or 3 points in total, in just the past 2 rounds, which has completely wiped out their Constructors' Championship lead, and Perez is a big part of that. Obviously in Hungary, the whole Bottas bowling game, taking both Red Bulls out and various other drivers, Lando Norris included, well, it was unlucky for Checo. And another thing that works against Checo that we should probably take into consideration, because it is a bit unfair on him, he is behind on upgrades compared to Max. Apparently he hasn't been receiving the upgrades at the same time as Max, so obviously that explains some of the qualifying gap. So that's a bit unfair towards Checo, but again, if Red Bull doesn't have enough money to put the same parts on both cars, or is running a bit behind, fair enough. So overall, it's been an okay season for Checo. I think 6 out of 10 is a fair rating. I think the 2 podiums he had were absolutely fantastic and showed what he is capable of. But then races in, for example, in Imola where he spun twice, and in Britain where he spun once, that kind of thing he needs to work on eliminating. And I think, his main objective is to beat Valtteri Bottas. I think he needs to do that more often because people don't rate Bottas. And by losing to Bottas, how does that reflect on you? So, yeah, it's a 6 out of 10. He needs to try and aim for a couple more podiums, I would say, in the second half of the season. So, yeah, he's my number 13 on the list, 6 out of 10. Number 12 on the list, also 6 out of 10, is Valtteri Bottas. Now, I felt they were performing at a similar level this season. Yes, Valtteri's had 6 podiums this season, but generally I feel like he's had 4 years in that car, or 5, 17, 18, 19, 20. This is his 5th season in the Mercedes, so he knows the team very well. So he should be doing better than Checo, I would say. And to be fair, look, Valtteri Bottas is a driver who many people give stick for. I used to give him a lot of criticism, but I'm starting to think maybe he's getting too much hate because he is doing his job as the number 2 for Mercedes. He's had 6 podiums this season, which is not bad, to be fair, because you look at Checo, he's only had 2. So he's doing an okay job. He's not bad, Valtteri, overall. And I do think people need to stop giving him so much stick because his teammate is Lewis Hamilton. And if your teammate's with Lewis Hamilton, you're going to have a hard time. So I think people need to give him a bit of a break. And he's had some bad luck. He got taken out by Russell in Imola. Now that's obviously subjective and up for debate. But I would generally say that Bottas was the victim in that incident. I don't think he instigated that incident. I think, look, George Russell turned on him and crashed into him. He went into the side of Bottas. He went on the grass and then went to the side of Bottas. And I don't think Bottas moved as aggressively to the right as some people might think. So for me, that was Russell's fault. So that was unlucky for Bottas, but then again, he shouldn't have been fighting with the Williams in the first place. That was embarrassing. And then Azerbaijan, where he was just really, really off the pace the whole race and just couldn't even make it into the points. That was another race where I was like, dude, what is this? But, he's had some bad luck. Monaco, where the pit stop he had was just really unfortunate of him. He was going to get a podium that race, and then Mercedes took it away from him with a very bad pit stop. And I'm pretty sure he had another not so great pit stop in Bahrain, if I remember correctly, which also wasn't ideal. So he's had some bad luck. But then he duffs it again in Hungary with taking out like 5 drivers or 4 drivers with one move, which completely his own fault. That was apparently his first ever first lap crash in his entire career. So Valtteri is generally a very clean driver. I think sometimes too clean, because I feel like he's sometimes a bit too scared to overtake people. I feel like he needs to be a bit more aggressive, but that's not the way to do it. He clearly outbraked himself. Yes, it was a wet track, but he should have taken account for that and broke a bit earlier. But easy for me to say from my armchair. So it's a 6 out of 10 for Valtteri Bottas. Number 12 on the list. I think he needs to try and aim for at least one race win this season, because it would be not so great for him to not win a single race this year in what is clearly a car that's capable of winning races. Now, number 11, George Russell. Again, 6 out of 10. I told you this was going to be very hard, very tight. George Russell, his qualifying this year again has been outstanding, as it has been his entire F1 career. He's generally destroyed his teammates in qualifying. Okay, to be fair, his teammates have been Robert Kubica, who returned after 8 years from a rally accident. So that's not a very great point of comparison. And then the next teammate he's had is Nicholas Latifi, who again is not a great point of comparison because Nicholas Latifi wasn't particularly amazing in Junior Series and is clearly there because he brings a lot of cash with him. So this is the thing I have with George Russell. He's a bit of an unknown quantity. Like, how good really is George Russell? Because, people will say, oh, he's a massive talent. He's clearly future world champion. I don't really know how good he is. He's an unknown quantity because he's been driving a Williams shopping trolley for the past, 3 seasons. So I don't know where to rate him. I didn't think he was worthy of top 10 because it would be a bit weird putting a driver who's like near the back of the grid in the top 10. So I put him out just outside because I think he has generally driven the Williams very well this year for the most part. And it's particularly in qualifying, making it into Q2 several times, even Q3 a couple of times. Very unlucky in where was it? In Styria to not score points there, because he was on course for points in the Styrian Grand Prix. He qualified in Q3, but unfortunately had the mechanical failure, which is very unfortunate and very unlucky of him. But then a few things that kind of turned me away from him was I felt he handled the Imola situation very badly, because I felt that crash was his fault. Because as I said, he went on the grass and went to the side of Bottas. And, fair enough, people make mistakes, everyone's human, people make mistakes, but I just think the way he handled that situation afterwards, I thought he was going to go up to Bottas and say, okay, I hope you're alright. No, he went up to Bottas and had a go at him, and I just think the way he handled that situation, was really not good of him, and he was putting all the blame on Bottas in the media interviews, and I just think, that was not great of him, but it is what it is. I guess it's here the moment stuff. But he did well. He finally, after 3 years of trying, broke his duck at Hungary and scored some points. So well done, George. Well done. Good on you. Because I think you deserve points after getting so close in 3 seasons, although having thrown away a few opportunities yourself, mind you. But otherwise, it's been a solid season, and I genuinely think he's probably the favourite for that Mercedes seat next year. Just about. So it's a 6 out of 10 for George Russell. Now on to number 10, Lance Stroll, also 6 out of 10. I'm giving a lot of people 6 out of 10 here. A relatively quiet season for Lance, but I think he's overall been more consistent than his teammate Sebastian Vettel. I think he's not had too many lows. He's scored points in 6 out of the 11 races so far this season. Generally, if I was to compare him to Sebastian Vettel, his highs haven't been as high, but his lows haven't been as low. I think that's a fair assessment. He's been fairly consistent. And his only disastrous race really was at Hungary, where he, just like Bottas, he had an embarrassing crash at turn 1 and took Leclerc and Ricardo out. So that was, really his only embarrassing incident of the whole year, and he was unlucky in Baku. Him, just like Verstappen, got a puncture in Baku, and his strategy was actually working out up to that point. He was on a one stop, he was going long, and unfortunately went a bit too long, had the tyre failure. Unlucky, not his fault. He would have got points. But generally, I think Lance has had a relatively decent season. I don't think he's been too bad. He's kept his car on the road, other than Hungary, and he's been bringing some good points for Aston Martin. And I would honestly say he's not been as far off his teammate, his full-time world champion teammate Sebastian Vettel, as the points would suggest. I think the points are quite misleading there. So, yeah, generally I think it's a 6 out of 10 for Lance Stroll, and he's in my top 10. 10th on my list. Now, number 9, Sebastian Vettel, with a 6.5 out of 10. And I think kind of the opposite of Lance. His lows have been lower, but his highs have been higher. Obviously, brilliant podium in Azerbaijan. Obviously aided by Lewis Hamilton going off the track and losing a heap of positions, and also Verstappen's tyre failure. That kind of helped him out there. But generally, I think, he had a slow start to the season by not scoring points in any of them. So it took him a while to adapt to that Aston Martin. Obviously, pre-season testing didn't go his way, because he had a lot of reliability issues in pre-season testing, a lot of time spent not, on the track and instead in the garage. And when pre-season testing was only 3 days long or something like that, it was, obviously he was on a back foot. So I think he's done well to adapt to the car. It took him a while, but, his podium in Azerbaijan, as I said, was great. His first podium for Aston Martin. Monaco, I actually think, was a better race. Monaco, I think, he qualified well. He even overtook Pierre Gasly and Lewis Hamilton on strategy, and he stayed in front of them, which I thought was a fantastic drive. Unfortunately, his overtake wasn't seen live,
because of the Lance Stroll replay, which became a meme. Well, that was annoying. But, and also he was unlucky in Hungary with the disqualification because he drove extremely well to get second position and he kept it clean and was challenging Ocon the whole way throughout the entire race and nearly won. So, unfortunate disqualification. But then again, he has made a few errors. He spun at Silverstone. It was an unforced error. He spun all by himself, which was annoying. And crashing in Bahrain, the first race of the season, which people were thinking, oh, it's going to be Vettel again, crashing and spinning throughout the season. But no, generally, I think he's been okay. He has only scored points in 3 races out of 11, so he needs to, I guess, score points more consistently. But otherwise, he's had an okay season. It's not been too bad. So overall, it's a 6.5 out of 10 for Sebastian Vettel, and he's number 9 on my list. Now, number 8 is Esteban Ocon, also a 6.5 out of 10. And for the most part, he's been fairly consistent. Obviously, 2019, his first season after a season out of the sport. So he was obviously on the back foot there, not taking part in the 2019 season. So 2020 was a bit of a slow season for him. He generally struggled against Daniel Ricciardo, but he did actually make progress towards Ricardo and generally got closer to him as the season progressed. And coming into the start of 2020, scoring points in 4 out of the 5 races and comfortably beating his teammate Fernando Alonso, beating him in actually every single race in the first 5 races of the season, and generally looked on top of Fernando. But then apparently he had some problems with his chassis. I don't know if that was true, but apparently there were rumours that he had problems with his chassis. So in the next 4 races, didn't score any points, while his teammate Alonso scored points and overtook him in the standings. But then he had his chassis change and was back to point scoring ways, scoring points in the last 2 races of the season. But obviously his breakthrough, winning his first race of his career in Hungary, a long time coming, Esteban Ocon, after 5 years being in a sport since 2016, obviously having the year out, not scoring points, and not scoring a single race win. Having his first podium last year at Sakir and having his first race win only a year later clearly shows that he is starting to find his feet once again in Formula 1. And obviously that race win needed a lot of fortune because the 2 Red Bulls were taken out. Bottas took himself out. Lando Norris was also taken out. Lewis Hamilton was, had the strategy mistake. His team didn't bring him in. So obviously a lot of shit had to fall in his place for him to get the win. And Fernando Alonso as well, holding up Lewis Hamilton for over 10 laps, making sure that Hamilton didn't get that race win. And he damn well nearly got that race win in the end by only finishing less than 3 seconds behind. But still, he had Sebastian Vettel, a 4-time world champion, on his ass for the entire race basically. And he coped with the pressure. And he kept it clean under the most immense pressure to take his first win. So fair play to Esteban Ocon. And, I'm happy for the guy. And I think he drove extremely well that race. And he's had a quiet but solid season. So it's a 6.5 out of 10 for Esteban Ocon. And he's my 8th best driver of the season. Now, my 7th best driver of the season, and also a 6.5 out of 10, is Fernando Alonso. And as I said earlier, Esteban Ocon had the measure of him in the first 5 races of the season. Fernando Alonso took a while to adapt to the Alpine A521, but it must be you must bear in mind that he did have his unfortunate cycling accident before the start of the season, which I believe resulted in a piece of metal being installed into his jaw. So obviously he needed time to recover. So you have to take that into account. So that probably did affect his performance in some way. But after the first 5 races of the season, with Ocon's chassis woes, he has scored points in the last 6 races of the season. He has scored points 6 races in a row. And that is the current longest active streak of point scoring finishes by any driver so far this season. So Fernando Alonso has actually recovered his season very well. He would have been outside the top 10 quite easily after the first 5 races, but the next 6 races he's done very well to score points in all those races and did a superb defensive job defending against Lewis Hamilton for over 10 laps. And this meant, despite his much slower Alpine car defending against a much faster Mercedes, he helped Esteban Ocon to get that race win and stop Lewis Hamilton from winning that race. So fair play to Fernando. It's a 6.5 out of 10.
I'm sure he's going to continue to get stronger throughout the course of the season. And please, Alpine, please give Fernando a race-winning car next season, because I think his talent is far too good for the midfield. So fingers crossed that Alpine gives Fernando Alonso a good car for next season. And now, number 6 and a 7 out of 10, Carlos Sainz. Now, I've got to say, I am very, very impressed with Carlos Sainz this season. Carlos has been very harsh on himself by saying, this has not been his best season, and he's generally not been that happy with the season. But I think he's done fantastically well to very quickly adapt to that Ferrari. He was on the pace almost immediately in that Ferrari. And, he's currently ahead of Leclerc in the standings. He's 3 points in front of Leclerc in the standings, despite Leclerc having 2 seasons in this team and Sainz being brand new to the team. But he's adapted extremely quickly. And you can generally take some credit for that. So well done to Carlos. And he's had 2 podiums this year, in Monaco and in Hungary. And obviously the Hungary podium was fortuitous, but he kept it clean, and he brought it home. So 2 podiums in his first season, more podiums than Charles Leclerc, I must say. And obviously, yes, I understand he has made a couple of errors this season, obviously spinning in Hungary qualifying, which didn't really affect his end result because he did get the podium. And then also spinning, I believe, in Baku qualifying as well, which probably affected his end result as well. But generally, he's had a very, very clean season, and he's been bringing in the points. He's only not scored points in 2 races this season, and has generally kept it clean. And as I said, outscoring his teammate, and is proving to be a very, very dependable, reliable driver. So well done to Carlos for quickly adapting to that car, and I think a well-deserved 7 out of 10 for him. And now we enter the top 5, and my 5th best driver of the season, also with a 7 out of 10, is Charles Leclerc. And yes, you're probably wondering, why am I putting Leclerc in front of Sainz? Because Sainz is currently ahead of him in the standings. Well, I think if you were to put peak Charles and peak Carlos, I would say that peak Charles would probably comfortably beat peak Carlos. I think Charles Leclerc is a more talented driver than Carlos Sainz. I think he's a quicker driver than Carlos Sainz, and that shows because he's leading the qualifying battle. And I think there's just more talent there. But I just think he's still in that Verstappen 2015 to 2018 phase where he just keeps making silly mistakes, crashing in Monaco qualifying where he could have won the race, or at least had a podium. He crashed in qualifying, which meant he wasn't even able to start the race there. So that was one thing against him. And then crashing in I believe Austria, he crashed, still was able to bring the car home, but ruined Gasly's race. And there's still those few mistakes that he's making that he needs to iron out, because it's not ideal that he's now in his 18, 19, 20. He's in his 4th season and he's still making mistakes. This is around the time where he needs to start ironing those mistakes out. Because I genuinely think there's a very, very fast and very talented racing driver in Charles, but he needs to minimise those errors. And by minimising those errors, he will absolutely be on the level of Max Verstappen. So that's the reason why I'm giving a 7 out of 10. He's made a few mistakes this season, but generally he's been very good overall and has shown a lot of pace. Now on to my 4th best driver of the season, 7.5 out of 10, Pierre Gasly. Now, as I said, Pierre Gasly has been riding a wave this season. Not just this season, but just since he was demoted to Toro Rosso after a pretty turbulent spell in Red Bull for the first half of 2019. He's been absolutely fantastic. He's been comfortably beating his teammates, first Dani Kvyat and now Yuki Tsunoda. And he's obviously had the podium in Baku, his 3rd podium of his career. All of his podiums have, funny enough, been with AlphaTauri and not with Red Bull, which I find quite funny. But he's been on the form of his life. He's been consistently a feature in Q3, despite having the 5th best car. Often qualifying in front of cars that are faster than him, Ferraris and McLarens usually. He's been fantastic in qualifying, and generally has been absolutely destroying his teammate Yuki Tsunoda. He's outqualified Yuki Tsunoda in every single race this season, which is being absolutely fantastic of him. And generally just really an asset to AlphaTauri. He's been bringing AlphaTauri the points for the most part, and his teammate Tsunoda hasn't really been doing that. And I think the 7.5 out of 10 for Pierre is being completely justified. His only truly bad race was in Bahrain, where he crashed on the opening lap. He drove into the back of Ricardo and ruined his own race there. But otherwise, he's been bringing up some consistent points. Was unlucky in Styria when he was taken out by Leclerc there. Had his race ruined. But otherwise, I think he's been very impressive and fully worthy of the 7.5 out of 10 rating. So Pierre Gasly is my 4th best driver of the season. Now on to the top 3, and the top 3 is always going to stir controversy because it obviously includes the 2 title contenders for the season. But I've put in 3rd place, also with a 7.5 out of 10, Lewis Hamilton. Now, I know some people are going to get cross with me for putting Lewis in 3rd and only a 7.5. He's had some genuinely great drives. I think his recovery drive in Hungary was fantastic. His team screwed up there by not bringing him in for dry tyres, which is a really bizarre error by Mercedes' strategy team there, because it would have been a sure win. It would have been a comfortable win had they done that. But Mercedes made it difficult for him. And, he was in 15th position, unable to overtake Haas cars in front. But, and Alfa Romeo's, but he put his pace to good use in clean air, stopped an extra time, and fought his way through the field from last position to finish in 2nd place. Obviously aided by Sebastian Vettel's disqualification. That was a great drive, and his drive in his first 4 races of the season, he won 3 out of the first 4 races of the season, and statistically that was the best start of his career. At that point, people were saying, "Oh, is Hamilton on his way to dominating another season?" So he's had some great drives. In Bahrain, for example, he held off Verstappen, and who probably had a faster race car. He held off Verstappen in Bahrain. Verstappen overtook him off track, had to give the position up, and Hamilton held on for dear life to win that race in Bahrain. So Hamilton's had some great drives, but it's not been the best Lewis Hamilton we've ever seen, because at Baku he had an opportunity to win the race. He overtook Checo into the first corner, but then pressed the button on the steering wheel, which made him go off the track, and that was him throwing a race win away. That was one of his mistakes. Another mistake in Imola, where he went off the track at the hairpin while trying to lap Russell, and was very lucky, it has to be said, that Bottas and Russell had their own incident bringing out the red flag, which meant that he didn't lose as much as he should have. So that was another mistake that he made. Monaco, where he was generally just off the pace compared to his teammate Bottas, finishing outside the top 5 and just being fairly lackluster the whole race, really. And then the Silverstone incident, where, okay, this is up for debate. You can, I guess, probably argue that either driver had their part to play in this incident, and neither driver was blameless. But I would put the majority of the blame on Hamilton here, because, yeah, he missed the apex at Silverstone, and that kind of pushed him a bit wide, and Verstappen was hit and taken out. So for me, that Hamilton deserved this penalty there, I would say. Was it a racing? I guess it was a racing incident, I suppose, for the most part. I don't think people who said it was a deliberate crash by Hamilton are just being silly. And I think generally the way Red Bull handled that situation was really just ridiculous by but just kind of implying that Hamilton would be happy with himself. Kind of very rude, snarky comments by Red Bull there. I think they really should have done better. And Max, I guess heat of the moment stuff, but him also kind of implying Hamilton celebrating while he was in the hospital was a bit of an overreaction. So overall, racing incident, I would say probably more Hamilton at fault, but racing incident and a kind of case where 2 drivers just didn't want to yield the position, and it's just one of those things, really. But yeah, I would put more of the blame on Lewis there, overall, generally. But neither driver was blameless. But yeah, generally, it's not been the cleanest season for Hamilton. You know, he's had 4 races where he has had some sort of incident or has been off the pace. He has had some great drivers, as I said, in Hungary and Bahrain, for example, but it's been a bit of a mixed bag. And I don't think it's been his best season by any means. So that's why I'm giving Hamilton a 7.5 out of 10. Not a bad season, but I think he can improve in the second half of the season. 7.5 out of 10 and the third best driver of the season. Now on to the top 2, and up in second position with an 8 out of 10 is Max Verstappen. And Max Verstappen, you know, hasn't really done much wrong this season. I mean, you know, he's won 5 races. He's been very unlucky in Baku. He was on course to win that race, but then had the puncture, which was very unfortunate because it would have been a win for him. Obviously, the incident with Hamilton, which, as I said, was, I would say, racing incident, but more Hamilton's fault. So, yeah, unlucky for Max in a way. Probably should have left a bit more room for Lewis. Maybe you could argue at Silverstone. But overall, I put more of the blame on Lewis generally, but more of a racing incident, really. And, you know, so he's had bad luck in Azerbaijan and to an extent in Britain and, you know, in Hungary as well. Hungary was the big one where he was taken out by Bottas and was on course for at least a podium, surely. But as I said, taken out by Bottas and had to spend the rest of the race with quite a big portion of his car missing. So he did well to even finish 9th and score a couple of points there with what was essentially quite a big chunk of his car missing, which undoubtedly would have given him quite serious handling issues. So to get 2 points there was very good. But generally, I think he's made less critical errors than Hamilton this season. Okay, not completing a legitimate pass on Hamilton at Bahrain was a mistake there. And going off at turn 1 at France was a bit of a mistake there. He did fix that later on. He did pass Hamilton and win. But he hasn't done a lot wrong this year, really. And I think overall he's been the slightly better driver than Lewis on balance, which is why I'm giving him an 8 out of 10. And for me, the second best driver of the season. But for me, scoring 9 out of 10 and being really comfortably the best driver of the season is Lando Norris. Probably the surprise of the season, the most improved driver on the grid, I would say, after spending 2 seasons having solid seasons but unspectacular seasons, losing to Carlos Sainz in both seasons, albeit closing the performance gap in 2020 compared to 2019. But going into this year, nobody expected Lando Norris to be beating Daniel Ricardo. I'm sure many people were saying, "Oh, Ricardo's gonna make mincemeat out of Lando," but Lando, for me, hasn't really made a critical error all season. I mean, you could say the invalidated lap time, which put him in the top 3 at Imola, I believe. You know, and maybe letting faster cars by a bit too quickly in Austria, I believe it was, could have put a bit more of a battle there. Actually, no, it was actually the Styrian Grand Prix he did that. You know, but you know, I'm being really nitpicky. You have to be really nitpicky with Lando to find any sort of mistake that he's made this year, because you know in Silverstone he actually set the record for the longest streak of points finishes by any McLaren driver in history, with 15 points finishes in a row and 3 podiums. You know, he's been absolutely fantastic, and it was really unfortunate what happened in Hungary, where he was taken out by Valtteri Bottas. Yeah, he would have undoubtedly would have scored points there, maybe a podium if he had not been hit in the first corner there. Maybe probably not a podium, but would have been surely a top 5 finish. And very unlucky that his point streak came to an end. Not his fault at all, but I just think, you know, he's absolutely destroyed his highly regarded teammate Daniel Ricardo, to many people's surprise. And I just think Lando Norris, what does he need to do for the second half of the season? Just keep doing what he's doing. You know, he's doing absolutely everything that needs to be done, and he is a big reason why McLaren is joint third position in the standings right now, and Daniel Ricciardo needs to at least try to match Lando's performances for McLaren to bag that P3, because they can bag that P3 because Lando's doing the job. It's just Daniel was not really doing the job that they would have expected. So anyways, that is my top 20 drivers of the season, ranked from worst to best. Obviously there's going to be some disagreements, but that is generally how I feel about each driver. And now it's time to move on to the next portion of this mid-season review. Now it's time to take a look at what the best and worst moments of this season have been so far. Starting off with, what is the best race of the season? Now, we've had some pretty good races this season. Bahrain, where Hamilton held off Verstappen in arguably probably a worse car until the end of the race. You had France, where Verstappen overtook Hamilton towards the end of the race on strategy. You had Baku, an absolutely chaotic second half of the race. Verstappen having a puncture, Lance Stroll having a puncture, Hamilton going off the track. A surprise podium of Checo taking his first Red Bull win, and Gasly finishing on the podium. Vettel his first podium of Aston Martin. And we had Britain, the whole Hamilton-Verstappen incident, and Hamilton coming through to overtake Leclerc towards the dying stage of that race. You had Hungary, with half the field effectively being taken out in one corner, and then Vettel taking his second podium of Aston, only to be disqualified. Esteban Ocon taking his first ever race win, which was absolutely incredible. Alpine's first win as the Alpine outfit. And Fernando Alonso putting on a sterling defense of Hamilton. Hamilton himself coming through the field from last onto the podium in a great drive. Verstappen getting points in a broken car. For me, the Hungarian Grand Prix was the best race so far of the season, and it just reminded me of chaotic races that we've had in the past in Hungary, like 2015, 2014, 2011, 2006. Hungary tends to put on some great races in recent memory, despite being a track which is difficult to pass on and generally usually has dry weather. We've had some very, very good races recently and some bad ones, but for me, Ocon winning obviously was an absolute highlight. That beautiful Alpine A521, I love that livery. I'm so glad it's a race winner. Fernando Alonso, probably the drive of his best drive of the season, defending against a much faster Mercedes for a good 10 laps, helping Esteban win the race. Lewis himself coming through the fields, and Esteban under constant pressure from Sebastian Vettel the whole way through. It was a fantastic race. And for me, the Hungarian Grand Prix was the best race of the season. Now for the best moment of the season. Now, that has to be probably the Silverstone incident between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen, because it got people talking. Okay, some of the fans were very toxic on both sides, I would say. Were very toxic in, saying this driver sucks, oh, this was on purpose, this was that. And generally, F1 Twitter was absolutely terrible after this incident. But, generally, that incident was just, what we've been waiting, what I've personally been waiting to see since the season started. I always knew this was going to happen. Two title contenders closely matched. At some point, they are going to have an accident like Senna and Prost did, like Hamilton Alonso did, like Rosberg, Hamilton. This kind of stuff we've seen for our history. The Silverstone incident was basically another episode in, historic clashes between title contenders. And, yeah, it's going to be a talking... If this championship gets decided by, a very small margin, that crash is going to be a talking point for a very long time. Probably for the rest of F1 history. So that for me was the best moment of the season.
And now for the worst race of the season so far, and I would generally probably say Monaco. Now, I'm a Monaco fan. I like Monaco. I love driving the track. I love the qualifying around Monaco. It's probably the best qualifying session the whole year. But I honestly genuinely think that rather than having a race, I honestly would be in favour of an extra qualifying session. So instead of a quali session and a race, have two qualifying sessions, both of which awarding half points. For me, that would be a better system. I know that's a controversial statement to make, but I think the best way to spice up Monaco, particularly now with the cars are so huge, overtaking is more difficult than ever. I feel like the race has become a bit redundant at this point. I think you need to have, like, because everyone loves Monaco qualifying. It's the races that people have issues with. So I think adding an extra session, why not try it out? You're going to try sprint qualifying, you might as well try that out. So I think Monaco's been probably the most boring race of the season. And also the worst moment of the season for me, probably as a Ricardo fan, was him getting lapped at Monaco. Like, I was like, oh my god, this is painful to see my favourite driver get lapped at Monaco. As I said, I know he was held up by slower cars in front of him, but man, he should not have qualified in that position in the first place. That kind of set the tone for the season, really. So that was disappointing. Another sad moment, I would say, is Vettel's disqualification and Russell's mechanical failure in Styria. Those were two pretty bad moments as well, because you'd think, oh, is my favourite driver, or is a driver I like going to do well, and then something bad happens to them. Particularly Vettel's disqualification, which was a long wait, and just to come out like that was very, very difficult. But yeah, look, that's racing, that's sport, and hopefully good second half of the season for all involved.
And finally, to round out this mid-season review, I'm going to discuss what I would like to see for the rest of this season and who needs to improve. So, 2018 was a title fight that started off very well, but unfortunately fizzled out in the second half of the season because Vettel made some mistakes. Ferrari had an upgrade that went wrong for a couple of races before they reverted back and improved again. But unfortunately, Hamilton was on fire and ran away with the title, and it seemed a disappointing end to what was a promising season. For me, the main thing I want to see for the season more than anything else is Verstappen and Hamilton going all the way to the final race of the season, and whoever wins the title wins it by less than 10 points. That's ideally what I want to see, because we've barely had that in the hybrid era. We only had that like twice, 2014 and 2016. And 2014 wasn't really that thrilling because Rosberg had a engine problem quite early on. So 2016 was the last time we had a truly tense final race of the season. So Verstappen and Hamilton, we need these two all the way until the last race. That would be so fantastic to see. And other things I would like to see, I'd like to see Ricardo finally finding his feet in the McLaren, because the P3 is there for the taking for the team. I feel like McLaren has the better car. It's just that Lando's making use of it and Daniel isn't. And same for Yuki. I feel like, he needs to improve and to, calm down a little bit. And yeah, that's pretty much what I would like to see for the second half of the season. And maybe a few more spicy races like Hungary and Baku would be quite fun. And hopefully Williams holds on to P8, because I like Williams and I want them to have a good car next year. And lastly, I'd like to see the Mercedes driver situation sorted out well in advance. And I don't really have a preference who I want to see in the second Mercedes seat, to be honest. All I'm saying is I hope Bottas stays on the grid, because I think he is F1 material, and it would suck to see him completely out of the sport. And I think he gets too much hate, so I'd like to see him, at least if not Mercedes, get a Williams seat or an Alfa Romeo seat. So anyways, that has been my mid-season review for the first 11 races of the 2021 Formula 1 season. I hope you enjoyed. I apologise for it being too long, but treat this like a podcast, just something to put on in the background while you do something more important. Just something chill. Anyways, enjoy the rest of the season. It's going to be a hectic, many triple headers, I believe. So it's going to be fun. So yeah, anyways, thank you very much for watching, and take care, guys. Goodbye.